Hey everyone. Hey man.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
It's good. Good. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know. You've been, I guess, well, I mean, you're down in California, right? So
Yeah,
you've been stuck down there, I guess, right?
I've been stuck down here. Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles, so it's not the worst place to be, but
Yeah.
it's been all right so far.
What's it been like for the lockdown there?
Um,
You guys
for the
first had it.
first for the first couple months, it was pretty rough. They literally closed down everything from small businesses to parks, beaches, obviously restaurants, bars, all of it.
Right.
And around late May, mid-May, they opened things up again, and then they closed things down again. So,
Right.
but it's you got to do what you got to do.
No, for sure, for sure. All right, I want to get right into this introduction. I'm excited for this one. So for everyone that doesn't know, this is Karim Khalil. Karim spent, I guess, a little bit of time with the club. Kareem's story is unique because he never actually played club volleyball before going on to play varsity. When he did go play varsity, he went on to play for the York Lions, where he was eventually named team captain. And then from there, I guess he played a little bit of one volleyball, and then yeah, the rest is kind of there. And you spent a lot of years coaching.
A lot of years coaching. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
All
I
with
guess
passion too.
yeah. So I guess to start things off, how did you get introduced to the club? How did you get introduced to volleyball?
It goes way back to high school. So I went to Father Michael Gates, which, as most people probably on this podcast know, is not a very good volleyball program. You never hear about them in volleyball, at least. They're known for soccer, for basketball primarily. And growing up, I was a basketball guy through and through. Played volleyball on the side. It was my secondary sport. And around, say, like grade 11, grade 12, I really started to blossom as a high school volleyball player. Started, taking over matches and so forth. Coaches were approaching me saying, "Hey, you should play rep."
Right.
But it's just our family situation just didn't allow for it for the most part. And so it comes down to my fifth year of high school. I end up coming back for my fifth year, and I during that season, so around October, around November, I was reaching out to all the volleyball coaches at York, Mac, U of T, Ryerson, Guelph, pretty much all the coaches in the GTA that I was considering applying to, or all the
Right.
universities, rather. And the only ones who met with me were Dave Preston at Mac and Wally Dyba. And neither of them were interested because they were done the recruiting. I didn't really have a background in volleyball, never played rep. Like Dave Preston was so flat out. He's like, you weren't on the national team, you weren't on the provincial team, you weren't on a rep team. We're not even looking at you. Like, you are not on our radar.
Right.
And he was nice enough to actually meet with me. Like, he gave me the entire tour at Mac, and so I can't be upset about that.
For sure.
And so, the season ends, school year comes down to an end, and I am walking down the hall right by the gym, and our athletic director, our phys ed head, comes out and says, "Hey, Kareem, have you seen this flyer? I know that you're interested in trying out at U of T. That's where I was committed to going at that point."
Right.
And she said, "I know you're interested in trying out, and you should take a look at this. They've got a great coach. You could probably learn a couple things, and maybe it'll help you in your tryouts."
Right.
And so I look at the flyer, and it's like Pac-Man, Champions League.
Right.
Let the 18U national champions coach your kid, something like that, because that team was the 18U national team that literally just won nationals.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I have nothing to lose. So it's like late May. At this point, like, the deadlines to accept universities or change universities are long gone. Like, they've passed. And Jesse.
You can see Jesse there.
Yeah, so like actually the coaches. So I go to the first day, and the coaches were Kelly Smith, Dean. I remember Dan Deering and Derek were there, and I want to say Jesse already was there. And I remember they had like a few rotating coaches as well. So like Terrell was there, Dre was there, Kadeem showed up a couple times, and I didn't really know these guys at that point. Like, this was really my first interaction with them.
For sure. Yeah.
But Kelly approaches me afterwards, and he goes, "You're pretty good. You should consider playing at the next level. Where do you see yourself going?" And so I tell him how Wally basically turned me down. Dave Preston turned me down. I was going to U of T to try out. And he goes, "Wally turned you down?" And I'm like, yeah, he said they were done recruiting. And he goes, let me talk to Wally. Wally and I are friends.
Right.
And so, yeah, Kelly takes my email address. He takes my number. And like 2-3 days later, it was that week, Wally calls me back, or calls me one night. And he goes, hey, Karim, this is Wally Daiba from, York University men's volleyball. And he basically explains like how their situation changed. They were done recruiting, but they lost a few players late in the season, and they needed some players.
Right.
And he's never seen me play. I had no recruiting tapes, nothing. And basically, off Kelly's word, Kelly basically told him, like, this guy's raw, he's athletic, and he can develop.
Yeah.
And based off that alone, Wally basically gave me a guarantee that I have a guaranteed spot on the team. Not guaranteed playing time, but a guaranteed spot.
Guaranteed spot, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's really great. But, I'm accepted to U of T. That's where I'm going. And he goes, well, what do you want to do? And before I could even finish the sentence, I was telling him that I wanted to do law. He goes, oh, we've got Osgoode Hall Law School. They're one of the best law schools in the country.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I know that. And he's like, yeah, and we're going to Mexico this year. So, you would go to Mexico right away.
Right.
And basically selling me on it. So I'm like, give me a couple days. Let me think about it. Let me talk to my parents. And yeah, long story short, I mean, I talked to them. My parents were completely against it. But I'm like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like I would be stupid to turn this down. So I call him back and tell him I'll do it. And as I'm on the phone, he literally calls an administrator with like the Ontario University admissions programs or something. And on the phone, they switch me over to York University.
Right.
And he basically goes, congratulations, you're a York University athlete. We should meet in person.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it was just like that. So it all came down to honestly that 1 or 2 sessions at Packman. It was a 6-week program, but the first 2 practices, it was Kelly Smith. Like this would not have happened without Packman. There's no way.
Right.
And it really came down to Kelly.
So I want to go back to high school briefly. Jesse had asked a question in the question box, and I'm sure he'll have a good laugh and you'll have a good laugh. His question was, how many spin serve did he get against you guys when you guys played him in school volleyball?
I knew he was going to ask that. At least 11. Honestly, it must have been a dozen. So this is a fun story because, so ROPS of volleyball, you've got 2 different brackets of teams, right? Jesse answer, honestly. At least 11, honestly. You've got 2 different brackets. I was not in the same bracket as Mississauga Secondary, so I've never seen them play. I've never seen rep volleyball athletes. Like we were in a much lower bracket.
Yeah, because you guys were in tier 2, right, at the time?
No, we were tier 1, but it was just like East and West.
Oh, okay.
We were in the separate bracket, but we were always playing like St. Paul's or Rick Hansen. Rick Hansen was a good team, but they were a bunch of like 6-foot guys. They weren't incredibly athletic, but they were just very polished players, and they would always beat us off of our own mistakes. But we played a tournament one year. I think I was in grade 12, so Jesse and those guys were in grade 11. And we go to Mississauga Secondary. It's my first time there. It's our first time playing them, and it's our first game. And they were warming up when we walked in.
Right.
And you've got Terrell, you've got Jordan Langley, you've got Kadeem Clark, you've got, I think David Williams was on that team.
Yeah.
And, you've got Dre, and then you got Jesse. Jesse, but all these guys are like bouncing the balls, and it's like bounce attack line, roof, bounce attack line, bleachers. Like it was just one after the other.
Right. And
we're walking in, we're like, what is this? I've never seen anything like this before. Jesse's not bouncing it into the roof, so don't worry about that. But they serve, and I think Jesse was their first server. And it's our left side and myself passing out of 6, and then our other player. Mm-hmm. And I kid you not, this guy serves at least 11, 12 balls in a row, and it's ace, 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 shank, and it's just over and over. And at some point, you're going to get defeated, or you're going to say, this guy has to miss at some point. Like, it's not possible.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Jesse's a lefty. So you would think as a lefty spin server, he's serving from 5 to 5. It's the longest distance. It's going to give you the longest distance, the longest room for error.
Yeah.
No, this guy's serving from 1, and it's like a banana serve going into 5-6.
Right.
And this is the thing. He's not beating you out of physicality. Like, it's not like he's blasting spin serves at us. It's just he's placing it. It was like short. It was deep, short, deep. It was in seams.
Right.
And we were just crappy passers, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to that question, it was at least a dozen serves.
So you hit on the point that obviously you guys weren't good passers at the time, right? So one of the biggest things I've heard just talking to varsity athletes is the biggest jump from club volleyball to university volleyball is the blocking and the passing.
Yeah.
So when you walked in the gym at York, how was it kind of adjusting to the different speed of the serves?
Big time. So it's not just the different speeds of the serves, it's also like how much bigger the gym is.
Yeah.
You've seen a varsity gym now. Like going from high school, you've got, say, a few meters of room for your baseline, so you can actually get a jump serve and so forth. In college or in university, you've got triple the amount of room. So the gym is bigger. You've just got so much more room for an approach, for a ball toss. The higher you toss the ball, the more velocity you can put into it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, the speed of the ball traveling at you becomes a factor for sure. And I mean, as guys get older, they also get stronger and they jump higher too. So yeah, I remember my first game watching York play, they were playing U of T, and I was still in high school at this point.
Right.
But it was part of me coming down just to see how they would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just blown away as to how much bigger everyone is, how much stronger everyone is, and how much faster the ball traveled. It's night and day.
For sure. And then going in there, what was kind of your mindset? Because obviously, like some of these guys obviously know some of the club players coming in,
mm-hmm.
and then you kind of walk on and no one probably knows who you are.
Nothing. So I get my offer from Wally, and I knew none of the guys, not one person. And I show up, and it's kind of like our summer orientations. And we were fortunate because that was the same year as the 2008 Olympics.
Right.
And the Brazilian national team with like Giba, Dante, Sergio, all those guys were traveling to the Olympics, and they were stopping in Toronto as a layover.
Wow.
And Wally pulled some strings and basically had them practice out of York.
Wow.
Which was incredible. So we watched all those guys warm up at the York Tate McKenzie gym.
Yeah.
And Wally was able to get us access. And so that was when I met a lot of the guys. So Jesse was a rookie alongside me. Clayton Wayrock was a Pac-Man guy that was a rookie. Devin Ratty. Dan Deering was there. He wasn't a York person at the time, but he showed up to the game. Felipe Humana was a York rookie at the time. So that's when I met all the rookies, and they just happened to be a lot of them were Pac-Man guys as well. And that experience, I think, helped just facilitate a bit of a relationship there. That was our first experience together, at least with me.
For sure.
Meeting a lot of the guys, which is a pretty cool experience. Part of watching these, ultimately the Jesse, who was better. I'll give it to the Brazilians that are Jesse hard. It was a pretty cool experience there. But I remember like our first few practices, you got to remember, I was raw. I've had no formal training at all. Like it was a miracle that I had a decent spike approach and I wasn't, goofy footed.
Yeah.
And so Wally was notorious for our first like training camp, first few weeks of the season. He would set us up in these drills just to put us outside of our comfort zones. Like you had to do one arm passing, one arm setting, like all these things that you teach kids now in like 14U levels.
Right.
Just to develop some sort of ball control, some sort of confidence of manipulating the ball and so forth. I had none of that. So I'm being put into drills with like Reed Hall and other more veteran players on the team that can do this stuff in their sleep. And I'm messing up every single time the ball touches my hands.
For sure.
And so, they were frustrated. They hated me. They're like, why is this guy on the team? But, over time, like I just consistently worked hard, always at practice, asked questions, went for extra help, always in the gym. You eventually pick these things up, right? And at the end of the day, I was fortunate because I was athletic. Yeah. So, the learning curve was steep, but I was for the most part able to adapt to it.
Right. And so you brought up Reed a little bit in there, right? Just talking about that he was one of the guys on the team and more kind of decorated, right? At the time, he was a left side, right? And he was, I think, almost leading the OUA, right, in kills.
Easily, yeah. He was up there. He was easily in the top 3 for a few years there.
Yeah. So what was, do you think there was maybe a little bit of a mentorship role there in some ways?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Like any first or second year player coming through the league, you're going to make mistakes, not just in volleyball, but like personal decisions, school decisions. And I remember for a while, I was starting to not be as straight. I was starting to make some poor decisions. And Reed came up to me. I was living in the school village. I had a house with a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
And Reed came over, just uninvited. He literally just knocked on the door one night and came into my bedroom, sat down. He goes, "You need to smarten up. These are the decisions you're making, and they're just not. They're not good decisions. You got to smarten up."
Right.
And Reed's one of those guys that you just respect. I mean, you just know what he's done. You know his personal background. You see what he's doing now. You have the utmost respect for Reed, which I did at the time as well. And I mean, he helped definitely change my path. He definitely helped put me on a better path. Mentored me to being ultimately the leader that I think I became at York. Ultimately, it was him as a captain. Then he graduated, and very next year I was the captain. So, yeah, I think he had a lot to do with that for sure.
Right. And then you talked about Wally pushing you guys outside of your comfort zone. So a story that I've heard from Jesse is, so Jesse had had class, and then was coming to practice a little bit late, and he walked in the gym and saw you kind of curled up in a ball over the garbage.
Oh, it was brutal. Yeah.
So maybe you can talk me through that practice a little bit.
Have you ever heard of 10 up?
Yeah.
Is that something you're familiar with? Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, always in training camp, early in the season, before we actually get into the grind of the season. Wally was always trying to instill good habits, a tenacious sort of defensive attitude, the ability to dive for balls, not be scared, go for it. And he called it 10 up. And so anytime he saw, we were in a practice drill and a guy didn't go for a ball, he would just blow his whistle and point to the baseline. And everyone knew what it meant. It's just, he didn't even have to say words. And you knew right away when you messed up. You knew you were that guy that's going to do 10 up. And so it was me. I didn't go for a ball. I didn't dive. And so he puts me on the baseline. And all the guys are kind of scattered around the gym. They line up across the net. And he's just got his buckets of balls or his bins of balls. And all he's doing is just tossing balls side to side. And the whole purpose of them is you have to dive and dig with two hands.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I must have been completely not paying attention because I kept digging with one hand and I was touching them and I was getting so upset because I'm like, the ball's going up. Why are you making me do more? And it just went on and on and on for minutes. This was non-ending. And I eventually am done, but I'm so just tired. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I walk to the side to get water and immediately throw up. There's a bin there, there's a garbage bin. I immediately throw up and I basically pass out. I'm so just done. I'm exhausted. I pass out right next to the garbage bin. Our one of our teammates, Alex Bucco, takes a picture. That's when Jesse walks in and I've got cold sweats. I'm green in the face. That was one of the worst things ever. I wouldn't do that to my worst enemy.
And going back to kind of you started off at York, right? No one knew who you were and they were pretty frustrated, right?
Early on, yeah, for sure.
Early on, right? How what was the maybe you can talk about the slow progression of obviously going from being a nobody on the team to then eventually being the team captain?
Yeah. I think one of the best but also one of the worst things that could have happened, worst things for the team, Alex Bucco, I mentioned him already. He was our starting middle. And everyone loved him. This guy was 6'2". He had the athleticism of a Terrell Bramwell, but he had the strength of a Reed Hall.
Right.
And he was our starting middle, or one of our starting middles. And he gets injured in preseason while we're in Mexico. I think he sprained his ankle or something. And we had no depth. And so we had another guy named Sean Dimnick that was also very raw. He was 6'6", but very raw. And then you had myself as well as 6'2", 6'3". And so Wally basically says it's going to be one of you guys that start in the middle. Someone has to backfill for him. It ended up being me. So basically game one in the season, I start in the middle. And I'm so undersized because, middles are 6'7", 6'8", and they're just beasts of men. So it was the worst thing that could have happened to the team because obviously you have a guy that's playing completely out of position in the middle in a very strong middle league at the time.
For sure.
But it was the best thing that could have happened to me because it was just so much more touches, so much more in-game ability. And I think from a personal development standpoint, the best thing that could happen to you is playing in the middle from a blocking perspective because you just start seeing everything so much more clearly. So you understand seams, you understand funneling the ball into certain angles, you understand footwork a lot better, you understand reading the setter a lot better. So, over the course of the full year, and that's ultimately what it was. I started that whole season in the middle. I didn't do very well. I was getting killed, but it just gave me, I think, a much faster development curve than if I just stayed on the bench or as a red shirt or something.
Right.
So that definitely helped. By my second year, I came back and I was far much better. I wasn't a drill killer anymore. It helped. It definitely helped.
Right. And then talking about leadership, what were some things that you really valued as a leader on the team?
When Reed was captain, he gave you a sense of confidence that no matter what was going to happen, he was your outlet. Very similar to what the type of leadership that you would see in like guys like Shawan, that no matter what situation you're in, you've got a guy that you can go to in times of doubt. And so that was an element that Reed brought. I didn't have that. That wasn't the player that I was. I would like to think that I was your even keel. I was your stability guy, but I wasn't. I was never going to be your go-to. That was guys like Ray Zito, Marco Dakic, Felipe. I was going to be the guy that was hopefully the glue on the team. And so when I was named captain, I was like, all right, well, that's clearly not going to be the leader that I am. I can't be that person. That's not who I am on the courts. What else can I do? How can I keep the team motivated? How can I keep the team in check? How can I motivate guys to not just be great volleyball players, but also be good in the classroom? Because a lot of guys, as I'm sure you're going to see throughout your career at Brock now, right? Brock.
Yeah.
A lot of guys become academically ineligible, and that screws your program because they're more often than not good players. And we were facing that experience. And so, we set up like study halls. We set up mentorship programs. We set up pilots that eventually became, staples within the department that they grew to the entire varsity department.
Right.
So, the way I looked at it was I want to be the big brother to a lot of these guys. Even though I was still so young, I was only in my third year. And we had a very young team. So, I was fortunate that I was captain of the team from third year to fifth year. And I saw that progression. I saw that growth in a lot of guys. And you just got to be a big brother for them. You got to be a good mentor. You got to lead by example. You can't tell guys to do something, but then not do it yourself.
Right.
So, it comes down to, your values, your qualities as a human being, how do you want to treat people?
Right.
I think that's what it came down to. And at least those are the qualities that I wanted to exhibit.
Right. And so during that time, you brought up that you and Jesse obviously came in together in the first year. So during that time that you would have gotten to know him, and then you would have started playing Indocan tournaments as well, correct? Around that time?
But that wasn't until later.
That wasn't until later.
No, that wasn't until after university. So Jesse and I played together for 2 years. And, we were close, but, Jesse commuted. I lived on campus. We would see each other at practice. But, it wasn't until after I started coaching at Pac-Man that him and I really became close.
Right.
We were obviously close on the team, but it wasn't like what it is now. Like, I generally think of the guy as a brother.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really happen until my third year where I started coaching with Pac-Man. And then you start seeing those guys every weekend. You're working 12, 20 hours every weekend.
Yeah.
All year round. You're doing summer camps with them. You're doing beach volleyball training with them. So it went from seeing him once a weekend on Sunday to like every day basically for 8 years. So we eventually, through coaching at Pac-Man, we became extremely close. I talk to the guy every day. We play Call of Duty.
Right. Right.
He became extremely close. Indocan happened after I graduated. So, I finished my fifth year. It's like 2013. Sook reaches out to me. Sook is the founder of the Indocan team. And for those of you who don't know what Indocan is, it's Indian-Canadian volleyball. And they play in Indian-Pakistan leagues throughout North America. So he reached out to me in 2014 alongside Jesse and said, hey, do you guys want to play? And I'm like, sure, there's cash prizes. Of course I want to play.
Yeah.
And from there, we started playing in Indocan volleyball. And I did that for, I think, 3 years. We traveled together all the way we would play in tournaments in Windsor, in Milwaukee, in Cincinnati, in Baltimore, in Chicago,
yeah.
Toronto. And the amazing thing is, it started as Jesse and I playing. along with say a couple of other guys from that community.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at it now, and that entire team is Pac-Man.
Yeah,
like,
we all
they're
played.
all
We
the
all
guys.
played.
Yeah, they're all the guys that are like 18U, 17U, and older, and they're all playing, and it's amazing because I love the fact that it's transitioned into now it's truly a community. Like you can actually sense the family
For sure.
in that team, which I don't know if it was before, but it certainly developed that way.
Right.
So to be a part of that, I look at those guys like family. Stook is a family member at this point. I love those guys. So I don't play anymore, but it's nice to see that they're still continuing to grow and expand that team and so forth and do well.
For sure. And I'm like, for the people that have played, for people at home, some of those tournaments get really interesting, right? And the competition's awesome. Is there one
Yeah.
one tournament or experience that you can speak to that really stands out in your mind?
There's a couple. The very first tournament I went to was one in Mississauga. We were playing at an old indoor facility that doesn't exist anymore, really. And it's my first tournament. I think it's Jesse's first tournament as well. And I have no idea what to expect. Like, they tell me it gets really rowdy, but
right.
I mean, these are guys that like it's passion. Like there are so many people from the community that come out and watch. Like, there's more people at these games than there are at varsity games. Mm-hmm. And people are passionate. Like, people are betting on the side.
Yeah.
It gets rowdy. And some of the younger guys on the team now, they've gotten like $100 after a game from a fan because they're like, you killed it. Yeah. So you deserve to get a payout.
For sure.
And so, yeah, that was my first one. I think my favorite tournament to play, though, was probably the Baltimore tournament. That was the one that we always looked at as that was the tournament of the year. It had the biggest cash out. Teams were bringing in like professional Indian players, like from India. They were flying them over, housing them. And then, we're amateur players. We're not pros, but we're playing against a pro.
Yeah.
And we won that tournament 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row.
What Suck said 3. Was that Clap? That would have been Clap?
That was Clap, yeah, exactly. And I think it was Baltimore. I think it was, yeah.
Baltimore? I know the last couple of years it's been Chicago.
Someone's going to put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Baltimore. Put it in, yeah.
But that was the Clap tournament, yeah.
Right, and yeah, that'd definitely be fun.
It was a lot of fun.
And what's
interesting is seeing, because it was a different type of volleyball. I mean, it wasn't the orthodox type of volleyball you would see in the OVA, OCAA, or OUA. It was a different style. And honestly, I think I became a better player after playing in Indocan because you just got exposed to different systems. You got exposed to different styles of play.
Yeah. Everyone's very, like, there's some guys that are just very physical there too, right?
Yeah.
Like, the physicality's like still a big thing there, right?
100%. Yeah, there was one guy, I'm forgetting his name, but he had like farmer strength. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, he was so strong, and every time I would block him or I would dig him, I would have welts on my arms. They were just, he was extremely, extremely strong for a volleyball player, I'd say.
Right. And then moving to the coaching side, you talked that you coach with Jesse, and then you also spent some time coaching with Alex, right, at Thomas Street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
summer camp. So I'm not sure if you know, but my first time ever playing volleyball was actually with you and Alex running summer camp at Thomas Street.
I remember. Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you say that because for a lot of kids that was the case. I remember seeing like Davis, your teammate.
Yeah.
For the first time, I remember seeing him at Thomas Street, and this guy's doing jump serves, and he's like 10 years old. Like, who is this kid? How is he doing this? Zach Albert, the first time I ever saw him play was at a York camp, and then the very next year later, he was in our Thomas Street camp.
Right.
So a lot of guys, a lot of the Pac-Man players that you see now originally got their start at camps, just like the Pac-Man summer camp, or in like Spikes programs. And I'm 10 years removed, or 10 years, from my start time at Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I started 2010, so 10 years. And those guys are now graduating college or like entering their final years of college, and you're like, wow, you've come a long way. Like the development.
Because you've seen them grow up, right?
They're literally like I look at them like little brothers at this point. They started when they're 10 and now they're 20, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing to see, and you're an example of that as well.
And during those summer camps, right, it gets fun, right? You have water balloon fights, right? You have a little bit of dodgeball. Maybe you can speak to how some of that, because I know you're competitive and I know Alex is competitive, and I'm sure you guys have probably been on separate teams for some of that stuff. Maybe you
All
can
the time.
talk to the kind of compete level between the two of you there.
All the time. Yeah. So our summer camps would be, I think it was like 9 to 12 would be strictly volleyball. That was like our volleyball portion of the camp.
Yeah.
And then after lunch, we would break it up a little bit. So we would introduce different sports that the kids could play. It would still be a volleyball focused camp, but we would introduce different things. And kids loved playing dodgeball. And we loved playing dodgeball too. Like that was our outlet.
Yeah.
And we would have like 5, 6 coaches. We would have a bunch of volunteers, and we would just split them up with the kids. So it would be like half kids, half counselors and coaches versus each other.
For sure.
And we would always, like Alex, I would just aim for this guy all the time. I wanted to hit this guy in the face with the ball every single time.
Every time.
Break his glasses. But honestly, he would get me all the time. This guy had the fastest arm and like snap I've ever seen. There was one day where he hit me so hard I literally flipped.
Right.
And, yeah, it was fun. We would definitely do that all the time. We would compete against David Leader all the time in terms of like who's got the better camp, which made both camps better. I truly think that. Like we would try to think about different games to bring in, different activities to bring in. And you know, I think the kids loved it because most kids would come back for consecutive weeks and so forth. Right. So it made the camps better. I think it made everyone have a better experience.
So was there an end verdict for who had the better camp? Or
Thomas Street. Thomas Street all day.
For sure.
Thomas Street all day.
I'm waiting for Jesse's comment. I'm excited to see this because
we can.
I'm sure he'll vouch for Leader. And then you spent a lot of time coaching at Mississauga Secondaries, right? On Sundays. So you did a little bit of VCC, right? A little bit of GTA, and obviously I think was there Champions League there at the time?
Yeah, Champions League was there as well.
So looking at, you got Parvier and Jesse now saying that the Leader camp's better, but so in specifically for the Champions League program, do you think there might have been like a little bit extra of a push to kind of really like obviously like maybe like help kids like in more depth just because of your circumstance?
In which program? Sorry.
In the Champions League program.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would have everything from spikes all the way up to like grade 12 really. So it was the Champions League and GTA programs. And we would have, it was Jesse, Kadim, Dan, Victoria, Shane Palmer for a few years, Sahil, and myself as the main coaches. And yeah, I mean, like a lot of those kids just didn't really have an opportunity for rep. And so they would come to Champions League and they would want to play a high level competitive volleyball, but also keep it fun, keep it recreational. And so you had to keep that in mind. You couldn't treat it like a rep program.
Right.
But those were some of my favorite sessions to coach because kids just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that a lot of those kids you saw later on rep teams, not necessarily with Pac-Man, but with rep teams across the OVA. It was nice to see that. That was always fun to see when you would run into them at tournaments and they would be like, "You are my first coach."
Right.
So, we always like that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So, and then going on to the club side of coaching, we have Jordan Figs in here as well as part.
I just saw him. Yeah.
Two members, obviously, of the team that you had coached with Oars for a couple of years. Maybe you can speak to that team and just talk about your experience with them.
Yeah. So I think it was 2016 was when they were 17U. And hey, Jordan. And I started off being an assistant coach with Jesse's 15U team. So that was
Avi, Arjun.
Yeah, Avi, exactly. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, I learned a ton off of Jesse. I learned a ton off of him that year. And then he tells me that Orist's team, the 17U team, lost their assistant coach and they need someone to help. So I'm like, all right, I'll help. I've got the time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really know a whole lot of the guys. I think I met Parvier probably a few times at that point. I never met Jordan yet. I knew Shawan because he was with the club for so long and, he was Shawan.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know him either. I just met him a few times. So I show up to practice the first day. Don't really know what to expect. Don't really know a lot of the guys or their characters, their personalities. None of it. I just show up.
Right.
And they're already a few weeks into season. I think they've already had a couple of tournaments that they won. And right away you could see the talent. You could see it. They would give most college teams a run for their money, I think, at 17U. They were that talented.
Right.
Yeah, Jordan, you were my favorite team. And I mean, like our first or second practice, speaking of Jordan, I remember we were doing this like down ball control drill. And it's basically off a dig and dig high in the middle, or off a hit, you got to dig high in the middle. And you need our setter to transition off the net and set a high ball to the left side. Just a standard system play.
Yep.
And can't remember who's digging, but they shank the ball. And they shank it to like deep corner 1. And I remember Jordan running off the net, sprinting to the back corner, doing like a hockey slide. He's on his back and he sets it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. That was the sickest set I've ever seen. Because it was game system too. Like it was a hittable ball.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that would be a one-off, but he would do that all the time. Like that's how much talent he had at like 17U, which was crazy. But then you had guys like Harvey, you had guys like Liam that were, you know, they didn't have the athletic prowess of a Shawan, but they were just all-round phenomenal volleyball players. Ball control, hitting ability, serving, IQ. These guys were volleyball. They grew up playing the sport.
For sure.
So as a coach, you ask yourself, okay, what can I contribute here? They already know the game. Like they've been playing since 13U. So they've already been playing for 4 years.
Yeah.
I've only been playing for 3 years longer than them.
For sure. Yeah.
Sure. I played in college. I played in university, but there's not a whole lot of difference in playing time.
No.
So at that point, you just try to say, okay, well, obviously there's things that I've learned over the years that I can help with. I can help with maybe their maturity as well, their development, how serious they take certain things, experiences that I could relay from or reflect on. But they were just such a good team. And then you have Shawan as well, right? And so that guy's accolades speak for itself at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of looking at that team, the 18U year, right? Obviously with a couple of big new additions to that team. What was it like coaching there right at the beginning of the year?
So I think you have to step back and think about or talk about the 17U.
Winning 18U provincials. Yeah.
So we won 17U provincials. We won 18U provincials playing in 17U. Do you know what I mean? We played out.
Yeah, you guys.
And we beat our 18U team.
Yeah.
And I think it was like 15-13. We definitely went extra sets. And you would think we were in like an Olympic medal match. There were so many people watching on like the upper balconies gathered around the courts. Like there was no room. And you could hear
it was packed. It was packed. It was only standing room. Because I remember I was watching from home and I saw like it was packed.
It was insane. And it wasn't just everyone watching. I mean, like there were some very prominent volleyball figures in that gym watching. And that was an amazing experience to be a part of. I remember I watched Shawan's interview, and he said that's his favorite memory. And I think I have to agree with him. That was a special game to be a part of.
Right.
And honestly, probably in the 2 years, maybe one of the best games I think as a team we played as a collective.
Right.
And so we go into nationals. We're ranked first. We're the favorite to win. We're blowing everyone out of the water on the first day. We're beating everyone easily on the second day. Guys are getting playing time. We're just cruising along. Like in everyone's minds, we're going to win nationals. There's no reason why we can't.
Yeah.
And then we play in the semis, and we beat that team. I don't remember if it went extra sets, but we win the semis, and immediately they're like, all right, you guys got to play the finals immediately.
Right. Yeah.
And we're like, whoa. Like,
and that's how volleyball tournaments are, right?
They are.
You play a game, 100%. You're on right away. Yeah.
Right away. And so, we run over to the main gym. We set up and we're playing the Calgary Dinos, and we beat them. I think we beat them fairly easily the first set. Like it was fairly easy. Like at this point, we're like, in our minds, we're gonna win nationals.
Yeah.
And then things just go haywire. Like we completely fall apart. There were maybe a few calls that didn't really go our way that didn't help with that. But we just completely collapse, and they end up beating us in 3.
Right.
And so, at the end of that game, everyone's pissed because like, how did this happen? How did we lose this game?
Yeah.
And we're in Edmonton or something, or somewhere on the West Coast, and we're like, wow, now we got to fly home. And
Calgary. It was
Calgary, it was exactly. It was the home team, and we fly home, and it's just like, okay, now we got summer. We have nowhere to like really process this. We got to go right into beach season. So that was it. And then we come back in 18U, and we go through our tryouts, and pretty much everyone comes back. We get the addition of Jordan Pereira, Tariq Sani, and Sander Petrozinski.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 those are the three additions.
Yeah.
And I could say special things about each of those players. They all brought a special talent to that team. But it obviously changes the dynamic of the team. Like anytime you add players or remove players, dynamics change, and you have a responsibility as a team, as a coaching staff, to figure out how to best support those dynamics.
Yeah, certainly.
And 18U has challenges on its own because everyone wants to make it to the next level. And so there's a lot of pressure in that 18U year. But again, on paper, we're the best team in the country, maybe even in North America. Like, hands down, we're the best team. And we go to the States. We play in Chicago.
You guys came second.
We come second at that tournament, which again, we could have won. There was no reason why we couldn't have won that. We have our tournaments here at home, and we pretty much win everything. I think we lost the Grand Prix tournament that year.
Okay.
But so we had a few more adversity. We had a bit more adversity that year, which, if you ask me now, is a good thing. You want adversity throughout the season, because if you're just winning everything all the time, how do you handle adversity when you're facing it at the biggest stage?
Yeah.
So in hindsight, I'm not upset about those things. I was hoping that it would help us moving forward. And so we go to nationals, and it's again the same thing. We're beating every team. The guys are playing well. We're playing well as a team.
Right.
And we play Calgary in the semis.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen more focus from that team. Like, they had it like it was a vendetta, that they wanted to absolutely embarrass this team.
Yeah.
And we crushed them. Like why couldn't we do this the year before?
Yeah. Why couldn't you do it a year before for one more set?
We
right?
absolutely crushed them. It was a no contest. And we have all the confidence, all the gears turning. We're playing well, and we go into the finals.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who we played even. It was, again,
Fog. It was
out
Fog.
west.
Yeah, it was
there you
Fog.
go. Yeah, there you go. And we win the first set. We're playing well in the second. It's a bit more competitive, but it's back and forth. It's a side-out game, but we're playing well. Like, we're handling the pressure well.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that we're in a position where we're serving. They have their best left side playing out of the right side in that rotation.
Yeah.
And we set up a strategy where, like, okay, we're going to serve their left side passer in position 4. We're going to serve him, take him out of the hitting rotation, and their setter is going to be forced to set their best player on the right side.
Yeah.
And we're matched up, and we stack up our block. It's Tariq, I think it's Jack, and it may have been Shawan on the right side as well.
Right.
Or Parveer. I don't remember what the rotation was, but
right.
I know Tariq's there.
And I think you guys got the block, right? But it was like apparently slightly out of bounds or something.
Tariq had him perfectly. I don't know how it was called out. It literally went straight down.
Right.
And we all stood up celebrating because that was match point.
Yeah.
Like, we were national champions. We all started celebrating at that point. It was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the relief, the accomplishment, like, we won nationals.
Right.
And then all you see is whistle, and the ref calls it to the other team.
Right.
He gives them the point. And, we're like, whoa, what happened? Look at the linesman. The linesman called it in, and the ref overturned it and gave it to the other team. And you're like, oh, what? And so, you have to recompose. You have to, recompose.
You got to regroup, yeah.
Regroup. And, I mean, I don't think we played bad in the last few points, but they just came back and they won. They won that
played
set.
well then. They played well.
They played well. And the third set, I think they just played phenomenal. They were blocking well. They were hitting well. They were digging and hitting in transition. Mm-hmm. They flat out beat us in the third set.
Right.
But I think the telling thing, and, it was a very similar situation between what happened in 17U and 18U.
Yeah.
And I remember in 17U, we were upset. We were vividly upset. It was obvious that we were an angry team that we lost. Mm-hmm. In 18U team, there was disappointment. Like, guys were crying in the corner. Mm-hmm. There was a legit feeling like you let yourselves down. We let ourselves down.
Yeah.
And to me, that showed growth. That showed that you're not blaming other situations for your loss. You're really looking at yourself and be like, wow, I did not play my best, or
you
collective did not play our best. So to me, that was a very obvious distinction as to, like, okay, this is growth. This is a good thing from this team.
Right.
And, I can only hope, like, that's it. At that point, that is the end of my coaching relationship with these guys. And you look at that roster now, and you have Shawan playing on the national team. You have Jordan being a standout player in the OUA. You have guys going to Queens. You have guys going to Waterloo. You can only hope that while that experience you wish they could have walked away with a gold medal.
Mm-hmm.
But you can only hope that those experiences help them move forward, because at the end of the day, 18U, you're still a young player.
Yeah.
You have so much volleyball still ahead of you that is arguably more important for your career, for your development as a person, right? So you can only hope that they walk away with a lesson there. And myself, you got to look yourself in the mirror as a coach and say, what could we have done differently as a coaching staff to have avoided that situation?
Yeah, for sure.
Or at least come out on the better side of that situation. So I think all in, it was definitely a moment to reflect on. But end of the day, that I love that team. I love all the guys on that team. I think we had a lot of special memories together. I wish nothing but the best for all of them, and I'm glad to see them all succeed. I'm glad to see guys like Parveer coaching in the club now and doing well. Hopefully he's coaching some of the things that I taught him as well. But yeah, it was an amazing experience, definitely.
No, certainly. And then I guess moving on to now a little bit after your time at York playing in the Volleyball League, right? Did you play 1 year or did you play 2 years there?
1 year. 1 year with one. Yeah.
So that 1 year, obviously, you played on the Madawaska Madmen, and you played with, obviously, a fellow York teammate, right? Ray Zito.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there were quite a few York guys.
Was there?
Yeah, we had Ray was our number one pick, but we had James Pattison, we had Marco Dakic as well.
And you had Mike Wahhabi as your coach as well.
Mike Wahhabi was our coach. Yeah, love that guy. If he's listening, I saw him on your earlier.
Yeah, he was on here. So maybe you can talk me through that experience playing against guys that you kind of played against in varsity and then played against, like, obviously further down the road.
Yeah, so the one league was a really cool experience. The one thing you realize when you're done playing varsity and you have no professional, you're not playing pro afterwards, that's it. Like, you're closing the book on competitive volleyball. Like, you're walking away. There's nothing else out there.
Yeah.
So, you play in like Scarborough men's leagues, and Terrence, I see you, Jumbo Shrimp. That was like our Scarborough men's team, and I love that. But the one league, when it opened up in 2016 or 2017, that was 3 or 4 years removed. And at that point, I was missing the competitive side of volleyball.
Right.
I wanted to get back into it. Mind you, I haven't been training like an athlete. I haven't been practicing volleyball. So, like, you lose a lot of the skills fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And so, they set it up as a draft where a bunch of guys come in and they sign up for the draft, and all these coaches and team owners rank you, and they draft you based off your rank. I don't remember what my draft pick was, but I think I was like the 5th or 6th guy to get selected to the Madmen.
Right.
And I was just stoked. I was stoked. Wow, I got picked. Like, I'm happy to be on the team. And I'm playing with ex-York guys, and I'm playing for Mike Wahhabi, who is like a big brother to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing with Howie Grossinger, who's one of the most well-liked people in the volleyball community. Like, this is a perfect situation. And we come in, we're practicing out of York, and John Barrett is a coach, is a coaching staff member as well.
Right.
And immediately, that was my first experience with John Barrett, and great guy. Like, I wish I had more exposure to him growing up in the volleyball world. Mike obviously coached me as an assistant coach throughout York, so very familiar setting, very familiar relationship there. But we've got guys like Joran Zeman, and for those of you who don't know, Joran is an ex-OUA MVP, so a phenomenal player. We've got Andre Brown, we've got James Battiston, we've got Marco Dakic, who is one of Queens' best players in his 5th year as well, Ray Zito. Mm-hmm. Eric Matson, one of the best liberos to ever play in Canada, like in the OUA or in U Sports in general. So lots of talent, and I'm there in this gym. Wow, like, I get to play all these every day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was an amazing experience because I learned in those short few weeks so much. And so we play our first game. Again, I don't remember who we're playing, but Wahhabi named me as our P2 starter.
Right.
So it's Ray on the P1, myself on P2, which to me was, I was a right side at York. It was not a left side. So to me, that was an accomplishment already. The fact that I was like, okay, well, these guys recognize me as good enough to start. They named me as a co-captain alongside Joran Zeman. Mm-hmm. And we play our first game, and we're playing against Rob Dyba. He's the coach. Yeah. And Rob knew me from York as well. And he goes, this guy's a right side. He can't pass. And they served me every ball for 3 sets. And I don't think I could have passed like any better. Like every ball that hit me went to the center. Like it was a perfect ball.
Right.
It came off my shoulder, off my elbow. It was just everything was going right. And we win that game pretty easily. Like, I mean, I remember serving well, hitting well, passing well, digging well, blocking well. Like it was just an all-around game. But at the end of the game, I'm like, wow, I am sore. Like everything in my body hurts. And it was just so obvious because I haven't been training. Like I'm not in volleyball shape. I call Reed Hall and I'm like, dude, I need to get into the matrix. I need to get back in shape. I need to get into like a jump program or something. Like you need to help me. So I start working out at Matrix because their facility is just down the street from where I grew up.
Right.
And then from there, we keep going to practices. And I could just feel my body like deteriorating. I was getting backstab, getting leg cramps. My shoulder was falling off. In university, I tore my supraspinatus. I tore my labrum in my hip. So I was falling apart at that point. And it just got worse and worse and worse. In terms, it got worse. Yeah. So by the end of the season, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. My body's going to break. I'm going to end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
So that was it. That was the end of that. But, you know, playing in that league with guys that were part of my generation that graduated around the same era or around the same time frame, with guys that were 4 years younger, like Alex Duncan Tebow, even guys like Jory Mantha. My mind is kind of blanking right now, but there were a lot of young guys coming out of the league that played and won. And I think the takeaway is you see how the game's progressed, even in those short few years. Like guys are getting faster, they're getting stronger,
more physical, right?
100%. It's absolutely true. Even Terrell, like actually, I gotta give a shout out to Terrell on this because he was in that same league. And yes, Terrell's playing pro. He's keeping up his body, but
he
for a guy
tore that league up, right? Like
he did every year.
He owned it, yeah.
Every year. He's 30, and for him to do what he's doing at 30 is a miracle. Like I don't understand how you can be in that good shape at that age. You would think that your body's going to start breaking down.
For sure.
But yeah, so I think having facilities like FITS, facilities like the Matrix that really take players in any sport, but volleyball specifically in this case, that are you're basically coming in at what, like 15U, 16U, if not younger, and you're learning how to jump, you're learning how to squat, you're learning how to do snatches and cleans. You're really seeing it now in this current generation of players that they're far more physical than my generation was.
Yeah.
They're far healthier. They're going to have much longer careers, hopefully, because of that. And I think it's a great outlook to what Canada or Ontario volleyball specifically has in store for the future.
Right.
And that's all you can hope for from a coach's perspective. You want your players to be better than you were.
Yeah.
And you can only hope that then when they're done and they give back to the community, that they pass that on as well. They pass all their knowledge on.
Yeah, once their time, for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm optimistic to see how the OUA compares to Canada West in the future, because Canada West has always won.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how we compare to the NCAA. I'm curious to see how Canada volleyball performs on the world stage, whether it's men or women.
Yeah.
And I'm optimistic. I think we're moving in the right direction.
For sure. And I guess the last question I have, so we obviously talked at the beginning, and you're obviously out in California working and stuff. What would be some future goals? Do you see yourself maybe coming back for a summer?
100%. 100%. I tell the guys this all the time. I definitely want to come home. I mean, I love it out here. It's a great place to be. End of the day, I am a family guy. I miss my family. I miss my friends.
Yeah.
And when I do come back, I absolutely want to be part of the club. I left the club because I was pursuing this opportunity, but I definitely do want to come back. So the goal is hopefully in the short future or in the near future, I have the opportunity to come back and start coaching again, because I definitely miss it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. Good to catch up. Stay safe, because obviously things aren't doing too well there. And then there's Jesse. Come back, Karim. We
have a 10U team.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. All right, I'll talk to you soon, Sean.
Yeah, sounds good. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll be announcing who's on Wednesday this coming Saturday.